Hi, everybody. It's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back again today on this wonderful Warp Tuesday to do what? We're going to talk about a Star Trek book. That's right, we have finished up the fantastic book, Pathways, by Jeri Taylor. And this is, of course, as you can see right here at the top, this is the untold story of Captain Janeway's crew. So, I go into these things no spoilers. I don't read the back. I don't try to figure out what's going on with it. I don't want to know. I want to go in without anything being revealed. And this one was recommended to me after my last book video, I think. And what a great recommendation. First off, Voyager is one of my all-time favorite Star Trek series, and this book gives you backstories for all the characters you see here on the cover, except for Seven and Captain Janeway. And of course, Captain Janeway had the book Mosaic, and that kind of covered all of her backstory. I'm sure there's going to be something similar with Seven, right? Or there is something similar out there. And then Pathways covers all the rest, right? So, and it's set against this prison break kind of story as well too. So you have each person kind of sitting down, telling their story, and then the next chapter is them, progressing further on trying to get out of the situation that they're in, right? And then it's kind of perfectly laid out too, where each person's story kind of gets, better and more intense before it finally culminates in just, a very wonderful Tuvok tale, to end the whole thing, right? So just a wonderful time. And again, always happy when I get to read a big old hardcover like this. Let's have a look at the book itself. It's very blue, as you can see, quite blue. Looking very nice. And then let's read from the dust jacket here. I can't read the whole thing. It's covered by a sticker. Let's see if we can. Oh, the back is just a quote from the book. So we'll skip that. In her acclaimed novel Mosaic, Jeri Taylor, co-creator and former executive producer of the Star Trek Voyager television series, explored the previously unrevealed past of Captain Catherine Janeway, filling in the missing chapters of Janeway's life with a compelling story of bravery, sacrifice, and personal triumph. Now, Pathways traces the winding roads that have led Janeway's fellow officers and closest friends to what may be the greatest crisis of their long journey home. A deadly encounter with hostile aliens has left Captain Janeway's crew separated from the Voyager and slowly starving to death in a disease-ridden alien prison camp. To keep up their determination as they plot their escape, the crew shares with each other the unlikely paths that brought them all to the USS Voyager and the Delta Quadrant. These are the stories of the command crew of the USS Voyager, of a fair-haired youth who seemed destined for greatness or disgrace, of a troubled half-human woman who didn't seem at home anywhere in the galaxy, of a traveler and treasure hunter who found the greatest prize of all, of a naive young man who lost his love in pursuit of his dreams, of a Vulcan who formed a surprising bond with a human woman of unusual courage and passion, of a child woman whose boundless curiosity led to a strange new world of marvels and dangers, and of a man who is perhaps closest of all to Catherine Janeway, the man whose unspoken love and dedication may hold the key to their survival. They begin as individuals following very different pathways, but together under the leadership of one remarkable woman, they have become one of the finest teams in the known universe, the crew of the USS Voyager. Nice. Okay. So again, this is Jeri Taylor here. Jeri Taylor is the co-creator and former executive producer of Star Trek Voyager. She also served as an executive producer of Star Trek Next Generation. And here she is, Jeri Taylor. So, now, again, if you're a Voyager fan, you are doing yourself a massive disservice by not reading both Mosaic and this book. They are, as far as I'm concerned, the canon, story of all of these characters, right? And You know, in my mind, I always push the books and the shows together anyway, because I mean, all of it, none of it is real anyway, right? So what does it matter? So it's all one big story to me. So I love, especially when you have a book that so perfectly meshes with what you've seen on the series. And since this was written by the series the co-creator, this book does that exactly. So she really knocks it out of the park. We do have some notes here from the book about books, Voyages of the Imagination here. This is Jeri speaking, and when she was interviewed. John also asked me to write Pathways. In fact, I hadn't finished writing Mosaic when he suggested the second book. John, I protested, you haven't even seen Mosaic yet. What if you don't like it? He had complete faith in me from the beginning, and with that support, I said yes and consigned myself to another year of sleeplessness. She confessed, in spite of the tribulations of writing 3 books while holding down a full-time job. See, I wonder what the third book is. I need to look that up. I should have did that before the video so I could have told you guys what exactly she had written as her third book during this time. But I did not do that because, a lot of times when I do these videos, I definitely don't think ahead. But, we'll figure that out and we'll talk about that at another time when we read the next, Jeri Taylor book. So, I found that I loved writing in the prose form. After the limitations and restrictions of teleplay, it was fun to be able to let my imagination soar and to write without anyone looking over my shoulder, without worrying about fitting a 42-minute format and creating a universe that had to be built on a soundstage. It is truly liberating. And that's the thing that I love about the Star Trek books too, is that it gives these creators a chance to do something that you just can't do oftentimes in a TV show. You're bound by the limitations of the budget, the time that you have to put into it. But with a book, all that goes out the window, and you can truly kind of just go out there and do what you want to do, which is fantastic. So, this book was published August of 1998, and it does come in at a nice whopping 438 pages. So, this book had it was a perfect book to be the first book in my new Star Trek notebook. So you open right to page 1, boom, and there you've got a whole nice page full of notes on Pathways. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, you can check out now, and we'll come back later, and we'll see you later. But I just want to go through, not the whole thing, but just kind of what I like to see and what I found interesting about each character's, backstory as they told it, right? And again, it's almost as if the prison story is the background to this. The real story is getting each of their characters, telling the story of their own lives in their own words, right? That's what this is about. So, and again, they do this in a chapter by chapter thing. So they get locked up in this place. They get caught out on this planet when they were doing a survey. I think they get gassed or something like that. When they wake up, boom, they're in prison. And I love kind of how the story too doesn't even go too much into about them, about who imprisoned them, or in the beginning or the end about the people or their area, because the story is more to focus on the stories of the crew of the Voyager, right? So anyway, they're in prison, they gather together, they start making their plans to do something, right? And on their first night, they decide, to kind of calm everyone's nerves. Chakotay is going to tell his story, right? So he tells his story, and, man, a lot of the Voyager's crew stories are very, very tragic, right? So Chakotay, of course, his story kind of centers around him, rejecting kind of his father and his family's ways, moving away from that. And then, of course, his whole planet that he came from is, destroyed by the Cardassians. He joins with the Maquis. And it's just a very, it's a perfect start to the book, right? I like that they did start with him, too, because you would have the inclination to maybe start with maybe Kim or Paris, but no, I like they started with a big one, with a big Chakotay story to kind of set the tone, right? And then within the prison story, of course, the Voyager crew is kind of doing what they can to get supplies and start to just get the lay of the land, the lay of the camp, right? The next story they tell is Harry Kim's story, which doesn't come with as much tragedy as the Chakotay story or some of the ones to follow, but it does give you a very, very good inside look at Harry Kim and like who he was and how he came to be, and it was actually it was very like what's the right word I'm trying to think of? Almost like inspiring at the end, right? When his this guy this commander that he thought was riding him the whole time kind of tells him how proud he is of what he did and that he was able to make it, and he kind of took him from this spoiled kid and turned him into like officer material, right? So I felt that was a really good story as well. Back to the prison, they continued to kind of show the horror, right? And I also love the prison guards. I think they're called the Subu. Very interesting, not like your typical humanoid. They've got tentacles. The tentacles have acid on them, right? They've got these weird, creepy heads. So they're very alien-looking aliens, which again, something very fun that you can do. Easy to do in a book, much harder to do in a series, right? So anyway, after Kim, B'Elanna tells her story, and again, her story was very interesting as well, with her kind of growing up between, being human, being Klingon, and then also her joining of the Maquis. There's this interesting little story where she's saved by Tom Paris, and I kind of liked how that kind of formed this little beginning connection, Back in the prison camp, they start to develop a plan, of course, and the Voyager crew, there's only 15 of them there, but they figure out if they can develop enough pieces, if they can scavenge around, maybe they can build a little transporter and transport their way right across, right out the fence, right? So, hell of a story, or hell of a plan, really. But, don't put anything past these people, right? So, anyway, they decide at this point, too, to split up their camp, to kind of give them a better hope of escaping curiosity of the guards, and also to, kind of search things out and kind of get things going better that way. Boy, Tom Paris's story, that is a sad one. I mean, we all kind of know what happened, that there was the accident, and then he lied to cover it up, and then he went back and, told the truth. But hearing it told and kind of getting it right from the beginning is a whole different thing. And it really does give you like a whole new look at him, especially when you just kind of take his whole arc into it too, when you see where it started, So this is awesome. And also very sad too, and it goes to show that there are so many tragedies in the lives of these characters, right? Next time, or this time in the prison segment, Janeway comes in kind of like in disguise. She's got like this blue robe on, she's got these rings on, and she asked to see the Voyager crew under the pretext of maybe like buying them as slaves or something like that. And she slaps Chakotay across the face with this ring, right? And that'll come up later, right? Next story, Neelix's story. I'm a big Neelix fan, so for me, this was pretty huge. And actually, after reading Neelix's story, it inspired me to do a little research online and come up with the ultimate Neelix bibliography, which we'll talk about at another time. But I was just wondering, what is the full Neelix knowledge if I want to get it? Where do I get it? And that's where I got it. But again, what a tragedy, right? Oh man, Neelix went through so much with the loss of his family, his whole world basically, right? And then there's this whole segment that he goes through where he's addicted to these rudonium crystals, and then his buddy Wix helps get him off of the crystals. Oh, man, and like I didn't even know any of that, right? And it adds this whole another aspect to Neelix's story, right? Back in the prison camp, the slap was a nanoprobe slap, and Chakotay now has a Borg nanoprobe sticking out of his face, and now they're thinking that, all right, Captain Janeway is trying to give us a clue, some way to get out of here. So now they are working even harder to get those transporters going. I missed a line here on chapter 13. But anyway, chapter 12 was Kessa's story, and you're asking, well, you're not asking, but I'm telling you, Kess was already gone from the show at this point, so how on earth is she going to tell her story? And it's interestingly done because after Neelix tells his story, Tuvok mentioned something about how he feels that Kess, her Katra, is still always around. And then when Neelix falls asleep, he's basically getting Kess telling him her story in his dream. So his dream is Kess's story, which is an interesting story too, because you get to see more of the Ocampa and kind of how she decided to go against the grain there and do something different than the rest of them, right? And then in chapter 13 again, they are just kind of getting things prepared. Their plan basically is they've built a couple of transporters. They're going to use these transporters to hollow out a hole in the ground. They're going to beam to that hole, beam from that hole outside the fence. Boom, 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 right? It's a scary plan, but if anyone can put this crazy plan together, it's the Voyager crew, right? So they're working on it, and they're digging out the hole, basically, right? The final story, ooh, what a good one. Tuvok's story, and he's got to be kind of convinced to tell it. Vorik is there with them in the group. He's the other Klingon on Voyager, and he's going through some things, and he convinces Tuvok to tell his story. And of course, Vulcans are long-lived, so his story is the longest, and it covers his time as a child. And I loved how he was basically made to go to Starfleet too. Very interesting. He wanted to go into the temple, into meditation. However, he was made to go into Starfleet because all his mind wanted to do was to go do the one thing. So his parents felt he had to be kind of like purged of that, So they sent him to Starfleet. He gets to serve in Starfleet. He becomes a track star. A woman falls in love with him, but then realizes that she, he can't reciprocate those feelings. He spends some time serving with Captain Sulu, but after 3 years serving in Starfleet, he decides he can't do it. He preferred just to go with the meditation route. So he comes back home. Now he has his parents' blessing to do so. He goes to the temple and he begins his meditation. And I want to say it goes on for maybe 6 years or so of just strict meditation, right? And he's even stricter than some of the other people there. But then what happens? The Ponfar. So he's gripped by the blood fever. He's got to go home. His parents have found a mate for him, and now you get a little bit of the family side of Tuvok. So you got a couple of years with him, just with you get a story of him with his two sons, and he's feeling he's not doing like a good enough job of raising them. They're not disciplined enough. So there was some, there's some good stuff here as well. Just being a dad, to be honest with you, that I was able to pull from that Tuvok section that I really liked, and ultimately, his story ends with his journey to the sacred mount of Seleia, right? And it's this fantastic trek across this desert, which takes him months, And first he runs out of water, and then he's got to drink the blood of animals, and he's eating these animals raw, and eventually he runs into this Salat, and they become friends, and almost as if he's kind of guiding him through the desert, and they go through all this together. They go through these storms. They help each other. He's helping to feed Tuvok, and eventually they get close to the mountain. And then Tuvok has an encounter with the, and of course I didn't write the name down. Um, all right, so like from Dune, like the sandworms from Dune, right? So like there's this big giant all-knowing one that lives in the Vulcan desert, and it comes up, and man, where the heck did I read this before too? I've read about this before. I can't, and I'm just gonna keep flipping until I find the thing now too. Anyway, so he has this encounter with this thing called the Underlier. I found it. Anyway, and it kind of puts him in contact with like the whole freaking universe. He has like this profound moment, right? And that's like the culmination of his trip, and he kind of realizes what he has to do. He feels like he's been given this gift from the universe, and now he's got to give that back, and that is his impetus for then joining Starfleet again. And then when he joins up with Starfleet again, he's paired up with this Starfleet captain, because basically his job in Starfleet at that time is to assess captains and be like, they did this, and this wrong tactically, and in other terms. So he does that to Captain Janeway, and he gets put on Janeway's crew, and he thinks that he is just kind of like annoying her, right? But she is taking him on as like her rock, this study point. And it's awesome to see the development of that relationship as well. And basically that is how the book ends. Of course, they do escape from the prison. Again, that's like the minor side story here. The transporter trick works. Harry Kim gets his foot crushed, but still holds on strong. They make it together. In the end, in a very, I don't know, it's kind of a fun scene, right? They don't have anywhere else to go. The prison guards are behind them. They don't know what to do. They get a sense, Chakotay does, of what to do. They're at this giant waterfall. He's like, everybody grab hands. We got to jump off this waterfall. And they jump off the waterfall and they go flying down. And as they're flying down the waterfall, they see the Voyager come rising up out of the mist. And then it transports them away. Very, it's again one of those things. You could never film it. It would never work on a TV episode. But the visual from a book's perspective was very cool. So I loved it. Very fun. Yeah. Hathaways, what a recommendation. What a book. And if you are a Voyager fan and you haven't read this book, then you should definitely go read it. And if you're a Voyager fan and you don't like reading books, then go get the book on tape and listen to it, because it is excellent and you do not want to miss it for sure. So make sure to check that out. And stay tuned for the next one, because you know what we're getting into now? A little Best and Brightest TNG action by Susan Wright. This is a fun one because I have this shelf over here in published order of all the TNG books. And it goes 1 through 50, right? It's the numbered novels with the unnumbered ones popped in where they belong, right? I've read them all except for this one. I didn't even realize that until someone suggested it to me. And I'm like, well, yeah, I have that somewhere. And then I looked at it, and boom, there it was on the shelf. I'm like, huh, that's perfect. So now once I read this, I'll have read like this entire row. And we'll talk about that when we read that. And we're going to start reading that right now. As always, my friends, thanks for hanging out and listening. Live long and prosper. We'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.